The Dallas Cowboys are in the cornerback market. We'll tell you some of our favorite round one options next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to take a look at 3 of the top cornerback prospects in the 2026 NFL draft. We know the Cowboys have a big need at cornerback. They could use an outside cornerback. They could use a slot corner. All options are on the table. And I want to start with Mansour Delane, who I think is gaining some traction over the last couple of weeks as maybe cornerback 1 in this class. You studied this tape from LSU. What did you think?
Yeah, interesting guy, right? He's a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. He's from Silver Spring, Maryland. He was ranked 650th nationally in 2022. And that's the kind of interesting thing that you're starting to see more with the kind of NIL area is you're seeing these guys leveling up, into the NFL. And it's not as much a case where you're seeing them necessarily coming from the small school, but they're starting out one place and they're going to another. And listen, he started out at Virginia Tech. It's not like that's necessarily a small school, but went from Virginia Tech after 3 seasons, went to LSU. The combine will confirm, but he appears to me and maybe you've got the numbers. In fact, I'm sure you do. I see him he's under 6 feet and under 190 pounds, probably, right? Is that what we think? Is that what?
Well, what would your guess be? I've got the official numbers here.
My guess would be like 5'11", 178.
Okay, so 5'1", 191. He actually put on a lot of weight.
Okay.
His verified 30 and a quarter inch arms, 74-inch wingspan. So you're talking about a undersized corner.
Yeah. Look, I mean, he was only targeted 34 times and he only allowed 13 catches. And I think it's because people just didn't throw his way. And he has a fluidity and a change of direction and reactive athleticism that is very, very good. He likes to play with his eyes, in an off coverage where he can react and his awareness can be leveraged. He is mostly an outside guy from what I saw, but he can play some in the slot too, or at least I saw him play in the slot. He flips his hips and runs in a flash when he sees it. His trust and his quickness allows him to be patient at the line of scrimmage. When he plays press coverage, he waits for the running receiver to commit before flipping his hips. I mean, when you're undersized like this, you kind of have to have really good technique, and he certainly checks that box, especially in kind of press coverage. He can be pushed around by bigger receivers off the line. He's not tall or long enough to consistently challenge the receiver when the ball is above his head. And his height does show up on tape in a derogatory way.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some concerns about him winning the ball while in the air. He is despite being undersized, he is more than physical enough as a tackler. He triggers quickly downhill when the throw is underneath, and he takes on blockers with no hesitation. So he plays with a level of physicality that you need on the edge, and he has the mentality to be a physical player. So that part of it isn't so bad. And considering the fact that he's only missed like 1 game in 3 years because of a core muscle injury and not like a bunch of wear and tear, would seem to indicate that he is a physical player, but his body can seemingly handle it. He finds the ball extremely quickly in the air. You'll see him coming off of his receiver and running towards the ball right after the QB throws towards somebody else. Like, he's a very smart player. He's always sneaking looks back at the quarterback. He's always getting a tip on what's happening. He's always pointing. He's always talking mid-snap. He's a big communicator. He's scrappy for a player whose game is based on finesse. Like, he is clearly a technique-based corner, but he has a combination of that plus being a really scrappy physical player, which I think is why we're talking about him as a first-round pick. He does have some flaws, but I think the fact that he is a good athlete with good technique and has a physical mentality that is the right kind of collection of things to be a good corner. He was a former high school wrestler. Last thing, where does he win? He's a smart, instinctual, reactive cover man. Unanswered questions. How much of a ceiling does his athleticism create?
There are just players when you watch tape that you kind of giggle when you laugh or when you watch it because they just make so many fun plays. And that's him for me. Like I loved watching Delane's tape. He's not big. This is typically a guy that, I mean, you don't draft short-armed, small cornerbacks who are going to run like in the mid 4.4s inside the top 12. But this guy is so good that I don't care. Like 40 career starts, 0 penalties, 0 touchdowns allowed during the 2025 season. You mentioned that he's a technical-based cornerback, but the top thing on my notes, I could go through all of them, but the number one thing is he's just a dog. Like that's the best compliment that I can give any defensive player is this is a guy that is so he's aggressive. There's clearly an energy and emotion to him that's really good, and I think it's infectious. This is the type of defensive back that I think the Cowboys have been missing the last couple of years. A guy that's willing to throw his weight around, that's going to tackle, that's going to energize his teammates. He's got a real chip on his shoulder, not like Anthony Brown, who had a potato chip on his shoulder that was tattooed. A real chip on his shoulder. I love this player.
This it's so funny you mentioned all that last part, because to me, the guy who I could not get out of my head watching him, and I think he's a better player than this, but I think everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say Orlando Scandrick, right? Like he's scrappy. He's also a technician, but he is not the dude that you want to get into a fight with in an alley either, right? Like he truly has a chip on his shoulder. So yeah, I agreed. I think early watching him, I felt like he has very defined weaknesses, and maybe that's not a bad thing, because I think every player has weakness, right? Of
course.
And if you know what his limitation is, that probably is better than having to discover that as he becomes an NFL player. I think that the rest of his game all adds up really, really well. And you just don't see this kind of combination of scrappy technique-based guys that still also have the requisite athleticism to be an NFL player.
Yeah, and he's going to get beat. I think, teams that run like a lot of over routes could get him a little bit because he's not like a high-end athlete. So I do think there are some weaknesses there. But I just love how he challenges everything. Like it's even the underneath completions are going to be tough for opposing receivers. And that's what you want as a cornerback that's going to make the opposing receivers day a living hell. And I think that's what he can do. I think that's what he can do at a really, really high level. Maybe he plays a little bit in the slot in the NFL. He only had about 100 career snaps. Yeah. I think he's an outside guy, and you pair him and DaRon Bland together, and I feel really good about that pairing.
Yeah, I think he's scrappy. I think like we said, like to me, the part of it that reminds me of Scandrick is this: you just don't see that blend of attitude and technique prowess, right? And Scandrick, you never really understood why he fell the way he did, because he ended up being so valuable for the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, like I said, we think Delane's more of an outside guy potentially than an inside. I think he will play inside, but I think he's more of an outside guy. But I just think it's that blend of, like you said, he has the athleticism. He's gonna run sub 4.5. Maybe it's not 4.3, but it's more than fast enough. He's maybe not quite the size that you want, but the attitude, everything between the years is perfect. And yes. That's what that plus having the requisite, just clearing the bar athletically. I think it's enough to kind of get him into the first round and potentially, I think, being the first quarter taken.
2 more comps for you. The high end here is like Trent McDuffie from Kansas City, kind of that inside outside corner, undersized, but it's going to fight his tail off. And then coincidentally, another Washington cornerback, Byron Murphy, who has played for the Cardinals in Minnesota. Same thing. It's one of these guys that just has really good feet, not a top tier athlete. I think Murphy went at the top of round 2. Delane's a better prospect than that. But I think you're getting that type of cornerback. And honestly, this is what Dallas has needed for a while. If they drafted him at 12, I would be thrilled with it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the top end is Witherspoon, right?
Sure.
From the
Seattle.
Seahawks. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the kind of player that you could potentially, hope that he could be someday. Yeah, and I certainly would not be upset at all if he's the pick at 12.
All right, let's talk about another cornerback, Avieon Terrell from Clemson, who I think might be one of the best values in round one. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I ever needed to hire someone for this show, I would go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I needed, which is real experience and not just some resume buzzwords. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement that it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, check out the Everydayer Club. You're going to get ad-free episodes of the Locked On Cowboys podcast for just $5 a month. Check out lockedoncowboys.supercast.com or check out the link in the show notes. All right, Landon, let's talk about Avieon Terrell from Clemson. What did you see on the tape?
Yeah, 4-star. This is a 4-star guy. He was the 244th ranked player in the 2023 recruiting class. Injury history, he had a quad injury in November. He only missed one game, and then there was apparently a concussion and ankle situation that he had in his 2024 camp. So not a ton of injury. Another guy that played a lot of games without too many injuries. And another guy that's also an undersized corner. He's under 6 feet. I would say under 100. I'm going to say, give me the numbers, Marcus, but I'm going to say that they're under what you gave me for Dallain.
5'1", so 5'11",
shorter. Okay.
180 pounds during spring workouts, 30 1/4 inch arms. So you're about 10 pounds lighter than Dallain, and the arm length is similar.
Okay. So yeah, just a little bit slightly under Dallain. So mostly an outside guy, also like Dallain, but played some inside as well from what I saw. My first experience watching him is the LSU tape.
Yeah, week one.
And I watched. That was one of the few, right? I watched the first 4.5 minutes of game tape of LSU running the ball away from him, throwing the ball away from him, and it was getting a little bit frustrating. And then suddenly, the first throw that they did that was even on the same side of the field as him, he destroys a tight end and forces a fumble, and Clemson recovers, right? And he also has that same scrappy mentality. He's a loud talker, as opposed to Dallain, who's spending a lot of time talking to his teammates. This guy's talking to the other team all the time, and he's got incredible quickness as well. He's also a great mirror athlete. His acceleration. When he breaks on the ball, his ability to click and close is incredible. Like there has been so many times when you saw him on top of the defenders in like either 4 or 3, where he's gliding up the sideline, and then as soon as he sees it, he's pulling the trigger and he's getting downhill and he's broken up the pass, right? And the quarterback is trying to get just a simple out route to an underneath throw. And he's able to get down there and make the play on it. So just really incredible in that regard. Experienced to press. He can be a little bit impatient with his feet at times, but quick enough in college to cover it up. We'll see if that translates in the NFL. Cleanly opens up his hips to glide upfield when in cover 3. Lack of size shows up a little bit at the top of routes where he's susceptible to shove-offs. Saw 2 deep crosses where he was tight with the receiver until they got a shove-off, and then they like at the point of the cross, they shoved him off and then created a huge bubble as they made their way across the field. They were wide open. always looking to rip the ball out. It felt like the first 5 times I saw him tackle somebody, he was trying to tackle the ball specifically, and he almost got the ball out.
Eight forced fumbles in the last 2 years.
It's certainly, you can tell that he works at it a lot. And in that regard, he's a very willing participant in the run defense. Like, that is certainly something that he is not going to shy away from. He has great technique. He's tough. He's a good leader. He's willing, but there are just moments where he just isn't big enough. And those moments are usually pretty key moments. It felt like specifically in that LSU game when he made a big play obviously earlier, but he also gave up a touchdown where the guy is able to, subtly push off at the top of his route in the end zone and catch a touchdown. And there was just a couple other times where it just felt like, maybe there was opportunities where maybe he's going to get an offensive pass interference call, but it's not something that gets called a lot. And it certainly isn't going to get called more in the NFL. And there's just times when he's being pushed around a little bit. So it's a little bit like Dallain, I guess, except to me, it's even more pronounced. I think Dallain struggles with it a little bit. There's definitely times when he's getting pushed around, it feels like, at the top of these routes. Where does he win? He's a scrappy, physical, and very versatile corner. I think he can do all of it for you. Play inside and outside probably equally well. Unanswered questions. Can he minimize the impact of a clear weakness to become a truly well-rounded corner? Is he destined to play inside only, or would he be better at nickel anyways? Like, is his game better translated to playing the nickel versus the outside? I don't think he's going to be limited to playing the inside. But he might be a better nickel guy. It
reminds me of when Asante Samuel Jr. came out of Florida State.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted him to play in the slot because he had, I think it was sub 30-inch arms and he was under 190 pounds. And we just assumed that he was going to play there. He never did. He's had a really nice career playing as an outside corner. He's always going to be small, but he's going to stick to whatever receivers that you put him to. Is he going to get bullied at the line of scrimmage? And is he going to lose at the catch point every now and then? Yeah. But you're also going to have to be throwing into contested situations all the time because he's going to be right there. To me, he's not a guy that I think the Cowboys are going to draft at 12. And honestly, they might not draft him at 20 because they love these long and athletic cornerbacks. And maybe he doesn't check those boxes. But if you told me he was the pick at 20 for Dallas, I would be thrilled. I really like him.
Yeah, I like him. I think that I wouldn't be upset with him at 20 either. Again, like, it's not just like Dallain, I guess. It's not so terrible to have a kind of pretty clear weakness. My concern more than Dallain is that is this going to be something that like is reoccurring a lot and it's going to be a problem? I mean, again, not enough that I wouldn't take him in the first round. This is a first round player. I mean, the pros greatly outweigh the cons with this guy. He's got the prowess. I mean, you can get him in the NFL. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's easy to say you can get him in an NFL locker room, but he was at Clemson. It's not like he was, at the Little Sisters of the Poor University. Like, he was working out. I'm sure,
or anything like that, right?
Oh, hey, buddy, watch it there. Okay. Yeah, no, I think he's a good player. I just, I worry about that specific weakness. And again, I'm not suggesting that he should be limited to be a nickel guy because he's short. I just wonder if his game doesn't translate to being a nickel maybe better than being an outside guy.
Maybe. I just think he's not, again, he's much like Delane. He's not afraid to throw his body around there. He's got a knack for creating fumbles. I saw Clemson use him as a blitzer a lot as well. And we saw the Super Bowl. Like, if you have these corners that are really good at blitzing, man, that can be such an asset to have. And you're not drafting a corner in round 1 because of their ability to blitz, but it's not a bad tool to have.
No, and that's why all those things are why I think he would be a good nickel, right? Because you give him a little bit closer to the targets by blitzing him from the nickel. And you're right, nickel sack artist is not a thing, but having a versatile corner who could do a lot of different things, including blitzing and including be a key part of the run game, I think that has value to it that he could provide.
All right, let's talk about another corner, Brandon Cisse from South Carolina, who is way bigger and more athletic than both of these guys. Could he be an option for the Cowboys in round 1? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for the events that you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years, and that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. from medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports that you care about the most. FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action, the drama of the curly matches that start slow but somehow get more intense, speed skating races decided by a few inches, hockey games that feel different right from the opening faceoff. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Lena, let's wrap up here with Brandon Cisse. I want to make sure I get the name right. From South Carolina. He's actually the youngest of these three cornerbacks. The size here, just under 6 foot, 190 pounds, 32-inch arms, which checks the box of what the Cowboys want. Going to run in the 4.4s. What did you see from his tape?
Well, first of all, I'd like to address the fact that I didn't see very much from his tape because he only averaged around 42 snaps a game. Did you notice this too?
I did.
Because it feels like when I was watching him, I kept on going, where's 15? We're in the third down in the red zone. Where's 15? And
I think he has less than 1,000 career snaps in college.
He does. And just to give context, because I went and checked, Dallain and Terrell both are averaging around 62 snaps a game. So that's, he's doing basically 2/3 of the amount of snaps, which I didn't really get a chance to go into a deep dive to see if there was something there. But I mean, it's interesting. It certainly is odd for a guy that is, a high-end kind of cornerback prospect. So something to mention there, just something there, because I mean, I don't know if that was a rotational thing or not, but it was interesting. So anyways, kind of like you mentioned, he has solid height, decent build, very nice length, the 32-inch arms, that checks, right? You see that. A bit thin-legged, but very well developed in the torso. He's a press man star. I think he's going to be he has got very good foot speed. He flips his hips and runs hip to hip with the receiver with ease. He's extremely sudden. He's another guy that can click and close really fast and gets downhill and breaks up passes when you just feel like, he's baiting the quarterback to throw the ball to the out. Be careful thinking that you can beat him with the quick out when he has eyes on you in off coverage. Mostly a silo corner, right? Like when his back isn't to the QB, when his butt isn't to the QB, it's to the sideline, right? Lots of cover 1, lots of cover 3. Very feisty when he's in press, though. Keeps his hands on you throughout the route, not to the point of a penalty, but he's going to let you know that he's covering you there. He's not, you're not going to be surprised to find him there. We talked about that. Really struggled to find enough snaps for him in 3 games, which is wild, right? And I ended up having to do, I think, 4 or 5 to kind of get enough of a picture because honestly, it just felt like there were large portions of this game at key moments that he wasn't on the field. And I'm not really sure why, because it's not like South Carolina was necessarily a fantastic team that could afford to have him off.
Well, I think part of the problem is he regressed as the season went on. And I wonder if they were just limiting the snaps because he was much better in the first half of the season than he was in games like LSU down the stretch.
Yeah, he never played, I think, more than like 60 or maybe it was like 70 snaps a game or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. So he's very sticky, but can struggle at the top. Of all these guys I saw, they all struggled at the top of the routes, right? And this guy, he has the size, I think, more than the other two to kind of really hone in and correct that a little bit further. Where does he win? He's a boundary cornerback in a silo system. I think if he's going to be asked to kind of do cover guys across the field, it may just be a little bit foreign to him just because it didn't feel like he was doing a lot of that. Unanswered questions. Why was he substituting so frequently? Is his agility good enough to consistently cover NFL wide receivers across the field? That's the one area of his game I felt like, in a phone booth as a change of direction player, it's not as good as when he's saddling up the sideline.
And I want to give him credit because I saw him put in the effort, like in the run game, trying to make tackles. Yeah. I just think he's kind of a mediocre tackler. And I mean, you talked about it, like he's just not particularly strong and physical. And that's frustrating because he's so much bigger and more imposing than the other two.
Players like that frustrate me, right? Like when they're big and they don't play physical, yes. It's like, What's
So
going on there?
I struggle with him because he's only got 2 interceptions. You're really worried about the play strength. I think he's really young. I would not be surprised if 3 or 4 years down the road, he's the best corner of these 3, honestly, because he's got the traits. I just wonder, like, if it could be really rough out of the gate for the first couple of years. And the fact that, like, if you've got to draft this guy inside the top 40 picks, because that's where he is right now on the consensus board, I would be concerned.
That's what I was just going to say is, where do you have this guy? Because it's interesting, in the beginning of the show, you said that these are 3 round 1 guys. And that actually kind of surprised me a little bit, because I don't know the consensus board, right?
Yeah, he's not a round 1 guy for me. On the consensus board, he's inside the top 32, which is why I could technically say that.
Yeah.
He's not somebody that I would consider there at all.
I wouldn't either. And I think he's got a lot longer way to go than I thought. And it's not even just that he's got development to do, because all these guys do, right? And I do think that you're right. Like, if it all works out for him, he could be the best of the bunch, right? But like, it's more that there's a lot of unknown there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because and it's almost like, and not to get off on a tangent, but it's almost like the forgotten part of the age equation of the whole evaluation of players. It's not just that they're going to be old when they get in here. It's that them being old in college kind of blurs the line of how performative they were, because they're 7 years older than an 18-year-old kid who's just came into college. This is like that, where it's like, I didn't see enough of him to like feel super good that, he's going to come in and make it. I think there's a lot more uncertainty than there normally would be for a starting SEC corner who's considered to be a first round talent.
That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday.